Speaking of people that have been making foolhardy decisions, am I hearing that? I've tried to check into this and I couldn't follow it. Maybe you can help walk me through the muddle of this, but there's been headlines on many of the wrestling sites this past few days that Uncle Dave Meltzer has been accused of reporting untrue facts, which kind of like alternative facts, I guess. And what has he been accused? He's been accused of he's been fed bullshit and he ran with it. It's what he was accused of. And I tried to see what in the world, what have they caught him on? And was it the time that he talked about when they removed Shibata's brain? Or
do you remember what he said? I'm sorry to stop you, and I hate to laugh about this, but he literally said after...
brain removal is hilarious.
But you never heard of this before, let alone it happening to Shibata, where they removed his brain and did whatever to it and put it back in his head and sewed him up? I don't know what they did.
Sometimes he words things in a very unwieldy fashion, but he was being accused of downright falsehood based on being fed a line of Who Shot John by somebody masquerading as somebody else, and he didn't check up on it, whatever. And I tried to figure out, okay, I'm going to click on this and see what's going on here. And again, accused of reporting for 3 or 4 or 5 years now, he's been saying the Cucamonga Kids are the greatest tag team in wrestling. Nobody's going to call him on that. All this other stuff that he said about the 7 stars and the 8 stars for the one-winged angels in the video game and the Tokyo Dome, and nobody's going to call him on that. But what they're calling him on is reporting shit about people, about somebody that came from somewhere that did something that I've never heard of in my fucking life. I don't even remember him reporting on these people. I've never heard these names. What the fuck's going on here?
I've tried to follow this too because some of the listeners started sending stuff in about this, I'd say about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Some tweets started coming in to you and me around that same period of time. And it's hard to follow in part because it appears that everyone who's covered it doesn't know how to write. That's one of the big issues in a way that is easy to digest or figure out what the hell's going on. It appears, and I hope I'm getting this right, that for a period of time, Dave Meltzer was reporting that the booker for Dragon Gate was the wrestler Nosawa. It appears this started when an anonymous email...
Not the wrestler Nosella. There's a lot of those.
No. It appears this originated when an email went out to several wrestling reporters from a throwaway email address in Japan reporting on all of these things. Everyone else either sniffed it out or just thought it was bullshit. Dave ran with it and continued to run with it, apparently, after multiple people were telling him, multiple experts in Dragon Gate were telling him
there are multiple experts in Dragon Gate.
There are. And, quite frankly, considering everything Dave watches, there's no way he could pay attention to Dragon Gate the way someone who actually cares about it would. And those people were telling him, this is wrong. This is all wrong. Please put something in the official record, the Observer, stating that I was reporting something that wasn't true. Nosawa wasn't the booker. Whatever else would need to be retracted. And it became a thing, from what I could tell, because Dave has refused as of this point to retract anything. And I don't know if refused is too harsh a term. I'm led to believe that he's going to talk about it on one of his podcasts.
Well, he hasn't come out and said, I'm not going to retract. He just hasn't said anything about it as of yet, correct?
To the best of my knowledge, yes. And it appears that, because someone sent in that he's going to do a show with Brian Alvarez on his podcast, where I'm sure this is going to come up and he'll talk about it. But this has become the big story. And, you and I could talk about personal experiences, but other people have jumped on it. Eric Bischoff and people who don't like Dave have jumped on us and said, see, this is what we've been telling you about this guy.
You see, he said shit about people that we've never heard of either that wasn't right, based on shit that people we've never heard of either said.
I guess part of the question is, well, first of all, what do you think of the overall story? I'm taking over the show, get this Drive-Thru. What do you think of the overall story, Jim? And also, what should Dave's process be? Because again, he is, for the most part, a one-man operation. He doesn't need to be, but he mostly is. and he has to watch wrestling, report on wrestling, run down stories, hopefully call people up and check on stories, you would hope. This is the kind of thing that you would hope is happening. Should Dave have a staff if he can't do this kind of thing?
Well, and honestly, you've just pointed out another similarity. Maybe this is why they're kindred spirits between Dave and Tony Khan. And I'm laughing at the whole thing that, again, this bit him in the ass, of his own volition, because once again, he covers these minute Japanese promotions. What can even in his own newsletter, if they have a big show, the people that write in on his poll for Stardom or Dragon Gate or whatever, they're like 74 people. So he's writing about these intricate business goings on in Japan for these small independent companies based on emails that people are sending him from fucking wherever. And here's the thing. Yes, he should. If he's going to report on these little niche companies at all, he ought to have somebody on the staff that, as you said, is an expert of that company, because then they'd be able to tell him what the fuck. Because how can you even keep track of these fucking minute names and especially in foreign countries? And no, people are going to say, well, Dave watches all that. So there's no possible way there's time in the day unless he's watching it while he's typing, which may explain his tortured syntax and verbiage these days. But that's the thing that I just found hilarious. After all of not only the outrageous comments that he's made, that's obviously his opinion, but people take as fact that these guys are the greatest tag team, or this was the greatest match with these guys that he's wrapped up with, that this is the place he actually gets tripped up, and the aha moment for Eric Bischoff. And it's about people that nobody really has ever fucking heard of before. And nobody gives a shit. And nobody gives a shit if they did report Nocella was the booker of Dragon Gate. Who in this country gives a shit? 146 people that read Dave's newsletter. But what he's doing is he's finding people that he, for whatever reason, thinks he can trust or believe or validates treasures the opinion of, and just running with the shit, because we've seen it. It's in AEW, whether it's about me or whether it's about Punk or whether it's about a number of other people. You can tell exactly who he's listening to, but that's for opinion. Everybody, I think, can, the normal human beings can tell when Dave's expressing an opinion. But when he's just saying, oh, and this guy's booking this and doing that, that goes more than opinion. And if it was a company that anybody knew fucking existed, he'd be in trouble. I bet you. What do you think, Brian?
Again, the question comes down to, what is the process? Looking beyond this being Dragon Gate, this could be anything. What's the process of actually running down a story or checking on something as minor as whatever or as big as who the booker is? I've mentioned before, there have been a few different times in the past where either something I was directly involved with or something that was about me was in the Observer. And I was never contacted one time for any clarification or comment or to say something was right or wrong. Not that it's a big deal or anything, but the first time he wrote about me, it had to be corrected the second time because it was wrong, and then the second time it was wrong. And I just didn't give a shit. I said, fuck it at that point. He's put the wrong name for my company. I mean, just like little things like that, but also the thing that always got me is years ago when we did Yama pit fighting, all of a sudden I got in the Observer that Paul Heyman turned us down to be involved. And I was there when Mike Tadros Jr. first wanted to get Paul involved. And I was there when Paul came to the meeting at Bob Meyerowitz's brother's office on Park Avenue South. And I was there when Bob Meyerowitz hung up the phone because Paul ambushed him with Braverman. And then it got...
Michael Braverman?
Yeah, his agent. And then it got in the Observer that he turned down Yama Pit fighting and other things about what we were doing. Again, a minuscule pay-per-view that doesn't matter in the general scheme of things. But he knew Bob Meyerowitz because he worked for him.
It was the side of the conversation that got hung up on that he heard from, and not the hanger up that he heard from.
Well, the point is he worked for Bob Meyerowitz and knew Bob Meyerowitz. And I had been in contact with people in his orbit, and even him, I think, at that time. Reach out to someone. Is this true? Instead, it was just someone told me this, and here it is in the Observer. And now, again, the Observer's always been considered like the New York Times or Wall Street Journal of Wrestling. If it's in there, most people think that's it. It's the story. It's fact. That's where you need to get some kind of retractions or something. Or you need another person working with you who could check on these things while you're typing up the Observer, which is an incredible task. Have one or two interns that could just call people up and, hi, I'm calling from the Wrestling Observer. We want to get clarification on this story. And do something like that. But I don't know. What do I know?
Well, and also, Nocella's agents weren't available for comment at that point anyway. You know, the international dateline and everything.